Welcome to MDE Day 3. So today we will be looking at proportions, and then we'll be looking over scale factors. So if you are about to see proportions and scale factors in your Math 154, here's your preview. So to start with, we have solving equations with proportions. Now, what is a proportion? So to start with, a ratio is some number to some number. 3 eggs to 2 cups of flour, for example, and it can be written as a fraction. So when you have two ratios that you set equal to each other, that's a proportion. And they're going to equal the same thing, just different ways of saying it. Like 2/5 is the same as 4/10. You've just doubled that recipe or doubled that ratio. When you have a ratio equals a ratio in this proportion, a great way to solve it is with cross multiplication. So cross multiplication is where you multiply the two numbers diagonal to each other. So it's this red arrow here, the 3 times 4. Then you repeat for the other set and you put an equals in the middle. So I would have 12 times x equals 3 times 4. 12 times x equals 3 times 4. And then you would solve for x and keep going. Now, when you do that, you end up dividing by the number that you were multiplying by x. So if you like this shorter cut method, it's up to you. It's up and around. I like to just keep it as a proportion. In the calculator, you can type it exactly as we just wrote it. 3 times 4 divided by 12. 3 times 4 divided by 12. It'll give you x equals 1, and you're good to go. So then pause the video for a minute and try a couple practice problems. Okay, now that you've had a little bit of time to work with it, let's go ahead and do our cross multiplication. So here it would be x times 7 equals 21 times 6. It doesn't matter what order you write these in. Then divide by the number that's with x. And again, you can type this right in. 21 times 6 divided by 7 and get 18 for your answer. If you have a number in front of x, that's okay too. It gets multiplied. So this would be 2 times x times 14. Equals 15 times 2. So that's 28x equals 30, and then divide by that 28. Now you wouldn't leave it like that. You need to reduce that down to 15/14. And then if I look at question 5, it's the same as 3x over 1 equals 2/5, and then you can cross multiply. So your answer for number 4 was 3/2, and your answer for number 5 was 2/15. All right, so try those out, make sure they make sense. Then we're going to move those on to word problems. So it's great to have the proportion, but we need to know how to set it up. So the biggest thing about when we're setting up a proportion is you need to have some type of units that match. So if I have A over B equals C over D, I need to be able to label the AB, the CD, the AC, and the BD. Now, what does that mean? Well, we'll go ahead and show it in an example. So for number 6, I've got an egg, or a recipe calls for 2 eggs and 3 cups of flour, for example. So to set up a proportion, the other side would also need to be eggs and flour. If instead I wanted to scale it by servings, I could do it that way too. So it says, how many eggs and flour do we need? So I could do, well, 2 eggs is what you need for 4 servings. This is one recipe. So now when I scale it, it's how many eggs for that many servings. So I need to make sure that I can label across. Those are servings. These are eggs. Batch 1, batch 2. Okay. So what I end up getting for eggs is when I cross multiply, I get 2 times 6 equals x times 4. And so I need 3 eggs. And then we're going to do the same for flour. Let me change my color so that we can tell it's flour this time. So I'm going to go back to the original. 3 cups of flour is in 4 servings. So how many would we need for 6 servings? And then we would cross multiply. So you end up needing 4.5 cups of flour as well. Okay. And then if you ever wanted to look at a percent as a proportion, you absolutely can. Think part whole equals part whole. So if I wanted to write 60%, for example, it's automatically 60 over 100 because a percent means divide by 100. So now if I want 60% of 20, 20 is the base, the part, and I'm looking for X, which is the part, 20 is the whole. So another way I look at it is part whole, part whole. And then we've got some nice practice problems for these. So again, I recommend stopping the video and trying these, and then we can look at a few of them. So Joe saves 5% of his monthly salary. And his monthly salary is $1,500 per month. So he saves 5% of $1,500. So I could do this as a proportion by taking the percent divided by 100 and equaling it to the part whole. Well, the part is the 5% and the whole is the 1,500. And then I could solve it that way. So 5 times 1,500 equals 100x divided by 100. And I end up with $75. If you wanted to do it as a straight percent problem, that would be fine too. Saying 0.05 times 1,500. You can do these multiple ways. Okay, so then our number 8 says total bill at a restaurant is $145 and you left a tip. What percent tip? This one works really well to do the part whole piece. You left $29 of $145, which is what percent out of 100. So part whole, part whole. To me, this one really lends itself to this method. So you end up saying that you did 20%. Now you're going to have to put it into that percent form. And then if you're ever not sure, you could go back and do, well, what is 20% of 145? Is that the correct amount? And you can always check your work that way. Okay, so then I'm going to do question 9 as well. Give you some nice notes. An option costs $230. It's on sale. What's the sale price? So you could say, if I'm getting 35% off, then that means I'm paying 65%. 100% minus the 35. So I could actually say, well, what is 65% of 230? And I can do it this way. It's $149.50. I could do the part whole, but just keep in mind, if you do part whole original cost, and then it's minus the 35%, you don't actually pay the 35%. Actually, that's not a part whole, that's just subtracting, but you could do a part whole if you wanted. You could do X out of 230 equals 35 over 100, which is probably a good way to think of it, but then that's the discount. So here is my 230. And I'm going to subtract 35% of 230. I'm not going to just pay 35%, which is also $149.50. And then you get a 5% raise. So if you're making 15 an hour, you add that 5% times 15 to get your raise. So you end up making $15.75 an hour. All right, that concludes our proportion section for day 3. Have a lovely day.